The sky that turned to iron the Galactic Council had gathered in their grand chamber that floated above the silver clouds of Velkar Prime, the largest and most powerful world in the Union. Hundreds of alien diplomats sat in curved rows, their eyes glowing, their voices whispering across the hall. They had come to witness the end of the Terran species. Humanity for years Earth had resisted. It had fought back against impossible odds. It had refused to kneel even when every allied world abandoned it. But now, the Council believed the humans were finished. They had no fleet, no colonies, no friends. Soon, they will surrender, declared High Chancellor Vorin, his voice sharp like broken glass. Human defiance was loud, but short-lived. Their armies are gone, their fleets destroyed. The hall filled with nods and laughter, strange alien tongues mocking the idea that humanity could ever rise again. To them, humans were nothing more than a forgotten noise in the galaxy's long history. But far away on the cold surface of the moon, silence ruled in that silence. Humanity's last breath waited deep underground, buried beneath layers of dust and steel. Ancient bunkers still thrummed with a faint pulse of life. Commander Alara Vaughn walked through a narrow corridor, the light above her flickering. She had not slept in 3 days. She wore an old black uniform. The symbol of the Terran Navy still burned on her chest, a symbol the galaxy thought extinct. "Status report," she said quietly, her voice calm but heavy. Chief Engineer Malik turned from a console, his face marked with exhaustion. "Power levels are stable, ma'am. Systems from the old bunkers are waking up slowly. But the reactors, they'll hold," Alara interrupted softly, her eyes on the massive door at the end of the hall. It was made of black metal older than the Council itself, etched with words long forgotten. United Terran Command. Behind that door slept something more powerful than any myth. Malik hesitated. "Do you really think the galaxy forgot us?" Alara gave a small smile. "They didn't forget, they wanted to." "There's a difference," the great metal door hissed, then began to move. Dust fell from the ceiling as heavy gears turned. The old hangar lights blinked alive, bathing the chamber in pale blue light. Inside, row after row of giant warships rested in silence, their hulls black and cold, their names engraved in silver across the sides. TSS Leviathan, TSS Vengeance, TSS Horizon, ships that had not seen the stars for almost a century. Alara stepped forward, her voice almost a whisper. "Begin the awakening protocol." Malik nodded, his fingers flying across the console. Lights rippled across the hangar as dormant engines roared to life. The ground trembled. Ancient reactors hummed, and slowly, the monsters of steel began to wake. From orbit, no one could see the movement beneath the moon's surface, but sensors across the system began to detect strange energy spikes. At the Galactic Citadel, an aide rushed into Vorin's chamber. "Sir, you need to see this," he said, handing over a holoscreen. Energy readings rising sharply from the Sol system. Vorin frowned. "That's impossible. The Terran system is under containment." "Apparently not anymore," the aide whispered, his skin turning pale. On the moon, Alara stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching as her crew powered the systems one by one, dust shaking from the ceiling as the great machine stretched like a beast waking from a long sleep. "Power cores stable," Malik reported. "Weapon systems online in 10 minutes. Alara nodded. "Transmit to all ships, it's time." Across the hidden lunar bases, hundreds of ships responded, their hulls gleaming under artificial lights, a silent army ready to rise again. Alara took a deep breath, then opened a secure channel, her voice steady. "To every Terran captain, to every survivor who still carries the fire of Earth, this is Commander Vaughn, the wait is over." She looked up, eyes bright. "They waited for us to kneel, now they'll see what happens when we stand." In that moment, the moon cracked open, the old silos erupted with light, and the black ships of humanity rose through the dust, their engines burning like suns. The first wave of dreadnoughts broke free from the surface, followed by carriers, cruisers, and destroyers, 1,000 warships moving in perfect silence, the stars reflecting on their armor from Earth's orbit. The night sky turned into a wall of iron and fire. The stars vanished behind the rising fleet. The heavens themselves seemed to darken. Council fleets stationed nearby tried to send messages, but their signals drowned in static, their radars blinded by the sheer scale of the awakening. Inside the Leviathan, Alara stood before the viewing glass, her reflection cold and determined. She whispered, "For every city they burned, for every child they took, for every grave they left behind." Malik smiled faintly. And for every fool who thought humans would surrender, Alara turned to her crew. Prepare to transmit the message moments later. Across the galaxy, the communication lines lit up, a single broadcast breaking into every frequency. The message was short, simple, and clear. To the Galactic Council, this is humanity. We do not kneel. We rise. The words echoed in silence, then the stars went dark as the Terran Armada spread across the void, covering the heavens like a storm of vengeance. In the council hall, panic spread, diplomats shouted, alarm screamed, and Vorin stared at the hologram of Earth's moon, his voice shaking. What have they done? But no one answered because outside the sky had turned to iron. The message that shook the council. The Galactic Council chamber had never known silence like this. The broadcast from the Terran system still echoed through the comm relays. A single human voice carried across thousands of light years. Calm, confident, unbroken. We do not kneel. We rise. High Chancellor Vorin sat frozen in his chair, his eyes wide, the blue glow of the holoscreen painting his face with cold light. The entire chamber trembled under the weight of disbelief. How many ships did you count? Asked General Kor, his voice rough. Over 800 confirmed. Possibly more hidden, said the analyst, her hands shaking. And they were not new models. Their ancient Terran dreadnoughts reactivated, upgraded, and fully armed. Vorin leaned forward slowly. They were supposed to be destroyed, he whispered. Every record showed Earth's fleet was gone. No, sir, replied Kor. They were sleeping. Across the galaxy, panic rippled through the Council's allied worlds. Traders and outposts received glimpses of the human armada spreading through the dark, warships blocking out starlight as they moved in formation. The media on Velkar Prime broadcasted emergency alerts, news anchors speaking with fear in their voices. The Terrans are back, they said, and they bring war. On the Leviathan, Commander Alara Vaughn stood in the command pit, the main screen showing hundreds of Terran vessels taking formation around Earth. A halo of steel and fire, status on Council response? She asked. Multiple fleets mobilizing from Velkar and Tethys sectors, Malik reported. But they don't know how to approach, our numbers terrify them. Ilara watched the stars fade behind her armada. Good, they should be terrified, she said. Then turned to her tactical officer. Patch me to the Terran network. A moment later, hundreds of faces appeared on the hollow wall. Old commanders, young captains, scientists, engineers, people who had lived in darkness too long. Ilara spoke quietly, her voice steady and strong. We've waited a century for this moment. They burned our worlds, erased our names, and called us extinct. Now they will learn the truth of humanity. She paused, then smiled. Our armada will not attack first. We will show them what discipline and resolve look like. We will let them see that we rise not as monsters but as the memory of what they feared most. Unity. A roar of agreement filled the channel. Voices of men and women who had waited a lifetime to fight for Earth again. At the Council Citadel, a meeting of emergency status had been called. Representatives from every major species attended, each one demanding answers. The humans were primitive. How did they hide such power? A reptilian delegate hissed, They were never primitive. Vorin snapped, his voice breaking the room's chaos. They were strategists, builders, and fighters. We forgot that. General Kor stepped forward, placing his clawed hand on the table. The Terrans are not attacking yet, but they are spreading a signal. Everyone turned as the audio played. The same human female voice, steady, powerful, filled the room. To the Galactic Council, we seek no conquest, only memory. You burned our world and called it justice. You starved our children and called it order. You thought time would bury us, but you cannot bury fire. The recording ended, and for a moment no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the Citadel's shield generators. Fire, Vorin repeated slowly. They're calling themselves the fire that returns. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, smaller species once enslaved by the Council began to whisper. They heard the Terran message, and for the first time in centuries they felt hope. If humans can rise again, one merchant said, then so can we. Reports flooded in of rebellions starting on remote worlds, Council control crumbling under its own fear. In the Council chamber, panic grew. Send the first fleet, Vorin ordered. Crush them before their myth spreads. General Kor hesitated. Sir, if we attack and fail, their myth becomes legend. Vorin slammed his fist on the table. They're humans, Kor, not gods, back on the Leviathan. Alara watched the Council fleets mobilize through the intel feeds. A wall of ships approaching Sol space. Malik stood beside her. "Looks like they're coming," he said. 300 warships, maybe more. Ilara smiled faintly. "They think they're ready," she said. "They have no idea what we've built in the dark." She turned toward the holomap, her fingers gliding across the interface, revealing hidden formations along Earth's orbit. Mining stations that were actually defense platforms. Asteroids that hid rail batteries. "By the time they arrive," Malik said, grinning, "the sky will be theirs only in memory." Ilara nodded, her voice low. "Then let the memory burn bright. On Velkar Prime." As the Council fleet prepared for departure, the civilians looked up at the night sky, the stars still shining, not knowing those same stars would soon vanish under Terran steel. And somewhere between those stars, Ilara Vaughn stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, the flag of Earth fluttering on her screen. She closed her eyes and whispered, "We're coming for you, Council, and we bring the night with us, the first strike of heaven's shadow." The Council fleets moved through the void like silver waves, thousands of ships stretching across the darkness, their engines leaving trails of cold blue fire. The commanders believed they were marching toward victory. Their mission was simple: reach Earth, demand surrender, and end the Terran threat before it began. But the void was quiet, too quiet. "Scanners clear," reported a young alien officer aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. "No enemy signatures detected." High Admiral Kareth leaned forward, his multiple eyes narrowing. "It doesn't matter, humans are fragile. They'll hide behind their planet until they run out of courage." He did not know that they were already surrounded. In the dark between Mars and Jupiter, humanity waited. The Terran Armada was silent. No transmissions, no radar pings. Their ships drifted like shadows. Power signatures hidden. Every hull coated in stealth alloy that absorbed light itself. On the Leviathan, Commander Ilara Vaughn stood at the main display. Her face calm, her heartbeat slow, her eyes watching the Council fleet enter the trap. "Targets confirmed," Malik said softly, his fingers dancing over the tactical console. "They've crossed the perimeter." "Signal the fleet," Ilara replied. Phase 1, silent strike. Across the hidden Terran lines, black dreadnoughts shifted, their massive hulls awakening. Cannons sliding into position, invisible to every alien scanner. Ilara raised her hand slowly. "Fire," she whispered. The void exploded. Dozens of kinetic projectiles, each the size of a building, flew at near light speed through the darkness, unseen until impact. The first wave tore through the Council vanguard, ships shattering into fire and metal. Alarms screamed through the Eternal Dominion. "Unknown impact detected, shields failing," shouted the officer. "We can't track the shots, they're coming from everywhere." Admiral Kareth stared at the tactical screen, watching his fleet die without seeing a single enemy ship. "Find them," he roared. "Find them now!" But by the time sensors recalibrated, the Terran Armada had already moved, their dreadnoughts slipping through shadows like predators in fog. In the Citadel, the Council chamber erupted in chaos, reports flashing across every console. "Our fleets are under attack. Unknown weapons. Unidentified forces." Vorin rose from his chair, his voice trembling. "Is it them?" "Yes, sir," said General Kor. "It's humanity." The words fell heavy in the air, like thunder before a storm. Meanwhile, on the Leviathan, Ilara's voice filled the comm channels. "Phase 2. Reveal." The Terran Armada switched on their engines, and the void lit up with silver fire. Thousands of black warships materialized from the shadows, forming an unbroken wall between Earth and the invading fleet. The aliens froze, their scanners now showing the truth, not hundreds, but thousands of Terran ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, and titans from every era of humanity's history. Reborn in iron and vengeance, Ilara watched the screen, her reflection glowing in the crimson light. "They wanted to see our surrender," she whispered. "Now they'll witness our resolve." "Fire main batteries," Malik ordered to the gunnery teams. The heavens thundered. Beams of white energy crossed the void, tearing through alien hulls like paper. Plasma flares burst in silent fire. The first Council fleet broke in minutes, ships spinning helplessly into the black. Admiral Kareth's voice filled the comms, desperate, furious. "Retreat!" "Fall back to regroup." But it was too late. The Terran fleet advanced like a storm front. Their formation perfect, their weapons merciless. For every Council ship that fell, another 10 followed. Humanity had turned the battlefield into art. Precise. Efficient, absolute, back in the Citadel. Vorin gripped the edge of the table. "How can they fight like this?" Their technology should be ancient, General Kor replied. It isn't about technology, it's about purpose, and he was right. Hours passed. The battle became legend in real time. The sky between Mars and Earth filled with debris and flame. The Terran fleet moved in silence. No cheers, no arrogance, just relentless precision. Alara stood tall on her bridge, her gaze fixed on the collapsing council formation. No joy in victory, she said quietly. Only justice, Malik nodded. Council transmissions detected. They're calling for ceasefire. Alara exhaled slowly. Ignore them. They had centuries to speak peace. The Leviathan's cannons fired again. This time straight through the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Council fleet. Its core detonated in a silent flash that turned night into day. From the Citadel, Vorin watched the feed. His skin drained of color. Admiral Kareth is gone, whispered one aide. The fleet is gone. No, Vorin said softly, his voice hollow. The illusion of control is gone, across the galaxy. The story spread like wildfire. Humans had returned, not as rebels, not as victims, but as conquerors of their own fate on colony worlds. Alien citizens whispered the same words, the ones that echoed from every Terran transmission. We do not kneel, we rise. Alara stepped closer to the viewport, watching the stars shimmer beyond the smoke. The first strike is done, she said. And the heavens have seen us, Malik smiled faintly. What happens now? Alara looked toward the distance where the light of the council capital still burned faintly. Now, she said softly, we remind them why they once feared the name humanity. The fall of the Citadel. The Galactic Citadel had stood for 10,000 years. A shining crown above the clouds of Velkar Prime, its towers reached into the heavens. Its halls echoed with pride. It had never fallen, never even been threatened until now. The sky above the planet burned red. Long-range sensors screamed warnings. The first fragments of debris from the destroyed fleet fell like meteors, streaking through the atmosphere, lighting the night like dying stars inside the grand chamber. Chaos had replaced ceremony, ambassadors shouted. Guards ran through the corridors, and the once calm glow of the council seal flickered with static. High Chancellor Vorin stood before the central screen, his voice raw. How many ships are still responding? Less than 50. Sir, replied General Kor, his tone grim. The rest are destroyed or retreating. We have lost contact with every command relay. Vorin's pale fingers trembled. 50, he repeated quietly. Against thousands. The chamber shook, faint at first, then stronger, dust falling from the ceiling. Impact detected, shouted a guard. Something massive just entered orbit. The image on the screen changed, showing a shadow blotting out the stars. A single colossal vessel, its hull marked with the faded symbol of the old Terran alliance. Beneath it, countless smaller ships formed a burning halo. Kor whispered, the Leviathan. Vorin stared at it, eyes wide, so the myths were true. In orbit, Commander Alara Vaughn stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, her eyes fixed on the planet below, her reflection cold and focused in the red glow of warning lights. Target lock established on Citadel coordinates, Malik reported, his hand steady despite the trembling of the ship beneath them. Alara nodded slowly. Begin transmission. Across the galaxy, every active comm channel, every display, every beacon went dark for one breath, then flickered to life, showing the face of a human woman. This is Commander Alara Vaughn of the Terran fleet, she said calmly. We came not to conquer, but to remind you. You built your empire on our graves. You erased our worlds and called it peace. That peace ends tonight. Her eyes narrowed slightly. To the people of Velkar Prime, to every species ruled under fear, leave the cities. The sky will fall. Then the signal ended. Panic swept through the capital. Civilians ran into the streets, ships tried to flee. The Council's proud armies scrambled to form defenses. But their anti-orbital cannons could not lock onto the Terran fleet. The ships moved too fast, their stealth systems too precise. Vorin turned to Kor, his voice desperate. Open a channel to them, maybe they will listen. Kor shook his head slowly. You never listened when they begged for mercy. In the command pit of the Leviathan, Malik whispered, Orbital strike platforms ready? Alara took a deep breath. Set coordinates, she said quietly. Non-civilian zones only. No unnecessary slaughter. The tactical officer hesitated. Ma'am, they never spared us. Alara's eyes softened. That's why we're different. Understood, the officer said. Moments later, the heavens opened. Massive kinetic rods fell through the clouds, invisible until they struck. Each impact was a silent flash of light, followed by thunder that cracked the sky. The Council's fleets and dockyards vanished, defense towers crumbled. The once glorious spires of the Citadel cracked and fell into the sea. The world that once ruled the stars now shook under the fury of the very species it tried to erase. In the Council chamber, Vorin and Kor watched in silence as fire consumed the horizon. "Do you hear that?" Vorin whispered. "That sound," Kor frowned. "The bombardment?" "No," Vorin said, closing his eyes. "It's the sound of history changing." On the Leviathan, the crew watched the destruction unfold. No cheers, no celebration, only silence. Malik turned toward Alara. "Citadel's central tower is gone. All resistance collapsing," Alara nodded. "Signal to all ships, stand down, heavy fire." "We've made our point." She looked at the screen again, her voice lowering. "Open a narrowband channel. Frequency 271. The comm officer blinked. "Old Terran frequency, ma'am." "Yes," she said. "I want them to remember the language of their fear." When the channel opened, Ilara spoke 3 words, her tone soft but sharp as a blade.
"We are home." In the ruins below, Vorin heard the broadcast echo through the Citadel's dying halls.
The sound of a human voice carried on the static of burning towers. He sank to his knees, his eyes reflecting the flames. "They warned us," he murmured, and we laughed. General Kor placed a hand on his shoulder, his expression heavy. "You taught them fear," he said quietly. "And they learned it too well." The Terran fleet moved into formation above the planet, a black crown over the red world. The light from the fires below reflected off their armor, making them glow like shadows of gods. Alara watched from her bridge, her voice quiet. "The galaxy has seen enough blood for one night." Malik nodded. "What now?" She looked out the viewport, her expression unreadable. "Now we rebuild, not as victims, not as ghosts, but as what we've always been. Human." The Leviathan turned slowly, its engines igniting. The fleet followed behind, leaving the burning citadel in silence, the dawn breaking through the smoke below. And as the humans vanished into the stars, every surviving world whispered the same words that began the legend anew. They waited for humanity to kneel. Instead, our warships blotted out the stars. The dawn of the Terran Age, the fires of Velkar Prime still glowed faintly in the blackness of space. The once golden world now silent, its proud citadel reduced to shadows and smoke. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy was quiet, no commands, no decrees, no voices of arrogance echoing from the council halls. Only silence, and in that silence humanity stood once more. Commander Ilara Vaughn watched from the bridge of the Leviathan, her reflection shimmering in the viewport. The fleet floated above the ruined capital, thousands of Terran ships forming a wall of black steel, their engines dim, their weapons silent. It was not a victory parade, it was a warning written in the stars. "Status?" she asked softly. Malik looked up from his console. "All systems stable, ma'am, no hostile signals detected. Communications from the outer sectors are..." "Unexpected? Unexpected how?" she asked. He turned the screen toward her. Hundreds of messages from different worlds scrolled down. Not threats, not surrender, but pledges. Worlds that had once served under the Council were now sending transmissions of unity. Colonies of enslaved species swearing allegiance to the Terrans, some offering peace, others simply saying thank you. Alara's expression softened. "They remember," she whispered. "They remember what we stood for." Across the galaxy, the story spread faster than any fleet could travel. The return of humanity became more than a rumor, it became legend. On mining worlds, children pointed at the sky and whispered about the Iron Angels who came from the dark. On border colonies, rebel leaders raised banners marked with the Terran insignia. And on neutral planets, merchants played the broadcast over and over again. That calm, defiant human voice saying, we do not kneel, we rise. Even species that had once feared humans began to speak their name with reverence. The galaxy had seen its gods fall, and its ghosts return on board the Leviathan. The Terran High Command gathered in the war room, holograms flickering above the table, outlines of shattered fleets, broken planets, and communication grids lighting up one by one as worlds tried to contact Earth. General Kale, an old soldier with a voice like gravel, leaned forward. "The Council is gone, but the galaxy is leaderless. Chaos will follow." Malik nodded. "Some of their worlds are already collapsing. Piracy, rebellion, famine without order. The entire sector could burn. Alara's gaze stayed fixed on the glowing hologram of the Sol system. Earth still silent below its shield network. Then we'll do what they couldn't, she said quietly. We bring order not through fear but through balance, Kale frowned. You mean to rebuild the Alliance? Alara nodded. Not the old one, something better. Something earned. Back on Earth, the ocean shimmered under the returning sunlight. For the first time in centuries, Terran cities began to wake. Vaults opened, power grids hummed. The long night was finally ending. Civilians who had lived underground stepped out into the dawn. Children stared up at the sky as the silhouettes of Terran warships passed overhead, their hulls reflecting the morning light. It was not the shadow of oppression but of guardianship. A voice echoed across the planet's restored networks. The same voice from the Leviathan. Strong and clear. This is Commander Vaughn of the Terran fleet. Earth has survived, humanity endures, and from this day forward, no world will suffer the chains we once wore. The message spread, carried by every signal relay, translated into 1,000 alien tongues. It reached the ruins of the Council Citadel, where survivors watched the human fleet rise from their skies and vanish into the stars. Far away, on the dark edge of the galaxy, deep in forgotten space, ancient civilizations stirred. Old enemies who once watched humanity fall now turned their eyes toward the light again. They had feared this day. The day the Terrans would return not as wanderers but as rulers of the void. In the silence of the command deck, Malik whispered, "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" Ilara looked toward the stars, her eyes distant. "Forgive us?" she repeated. "No, they'll fear us first. Then they'll respect us, and maybe one day, they'll understand us." She walked closer to the viewport, the stars reflecting across her face like sparks on steel. Humanity was never about conquest. Malik, it was about survival, and survival is power. The Leviathan's engines flared, blue light spilling across the dark. The Terran Armada turned from Velkar Prime and vanished into the horizon of stars, leaving behind only the echoes of their return. Weeks later, in what remained of the Council archives, a historian recorded a final entry, his voice trembling as he spoke. For ages we ruled the stars, believing ourselves untouchable. Then the humans returned, and reminded us that pride is fragile. We looked for monsters in the dark, and found men instead. He paused, then finished the record. The galaxy will never forget the day the heavens turned to iron, and the Terrans rose from their ashes, back on Earth. In a quiet hangar overlooking the Pacific horizon, Ilara stood alone watching the sunrise, the sound of waves touching the old concrete docks. She placed her hand on the hull of a restored shuttle, its metal still warm. Malik's voice came from behind her. "Orders from High Command. We've been asked to lead the New Frontier project. They're calling it the Dawn Initiative." Ilara smiled softly. "A new beginning," she said. "Seems fitting." She looked toward the rising sun and whispered, "They waited for humanity to kneel instead. We taught the stars how to stand." The waves rolled. The ships gleamed in the morning light, and the Terran Age began.